Yeah, we can go.
Hi guys, good morning, good afternoon now. Happy Sunday, good afternoon. This is Karen here, your favorite virtual assistant, and this is go ahead, Karen.
Hi, I'm Gail, your customer experience business strategist, and we are happy to be here today to talk about rebuilding relationships, especially those between fathers and daughters. And I'm going to invite Karen to share her particular experience before I share mine because hers is a little more interesting. I was going to say
Mhm,
exciting, but I guess it's not the right word because you want your relationship with your parent, whether dad or mom, to be, to be meaningful and
mhm.
to fill you with lots of warm and fuzzy stuff. So I'm going to let you go first, Karen, and then I'll share my story and then we'll hear a little bit about what the audience had to say because I did a poll and I'll
Okay,
share what people were saying about their relationships with their dad. And I know we were supposed to do this last week for
right,
Father's Day, so
right.
apologies to everybody who tuned
Yes.
in. But we're gonna get the conversation going now, Karen. So, oh, and if you're watching live, put live in the comments and let us know where you're from as well. And if you're watching it on the replay, you can just put replay in the comments. But don't forget to share where you're from. I am from Barbados, so of course I'm doing this live. Karen, where are you from? Just tell
I'm
our people
from
where you're from.
I'm from New York City.
Right, very good.
hmm
So let's hear a little bit about your relationship with your dad and what was that like for you?
Well, I remember a relationship. Well, let me start this by saying this. What I'm going to share is based on my personal experience, right? Like I say,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a therapist or anything. I'm sharing based on my experience and what I'm still currently going through and what I'm still learning from that journey. So that's the first thing I do definitely want to say. And for me and my dad, right? I came here. I wasn't born in the United States. I was actually born in Honduras, and when I came here, I was 6. So that's really most of the last memory that I remember of him, as far as presently being with,
Did you
seeing.
leave him? He stayed in Honduras and you came
Yeah,
to the US?
yeah,
Okay.
he stayed there. I came here with my mom and all of that,
Mm-hmm.
and I haven't really seen him obviously till 2 years ago. 2019 was
Mm-hmm.
the
So
first
how
time I
old you
saw
were
him.
when you saw him
I
after
was
that long period?
35.
Wow. So you hadn't seen him in all that time.
Yes, right. I haven't seen him in all that time. Right. So obviously, with me not seeing him, I didn't build a relationship with him, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I went there the first time, I saw him. We saw each other, and it was awkward because like I said, I don't know him, and he don't know me, of course. So it was something where what do you say? What conversations do you have? Things, just things that I was thinking about. So the first time really, there really, really much conversation, and when I came back, when I flew back to the States here, then we started to kind of build, right? He started to call on me and, build a relationship. I wanted to build a relationship as a father and daughter. But I think initially I had to really, I was kind of standoffish, right? Because of course I didn't know, I don't know him, but I really had to think, be honest with myself. Like, is
Mm-hmm.
this a relationship that I generally want to build? If this is somebody, like, how do I feel about him as a person, because that's important as well. Only because that's your biological parent, it doesn't always
Mm-hmm.
mean that you're gonna have feelings towards the person, especially if you don't really know the person, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I really generally, that's just my personal take. But I really generally have to consider: do I really want to build this relationship? How do I feel about him? And ultimately, for me, I do want to get to know him. I do want to build a relationship. So the first thing I needed to confirm with myself and check in. And then, of course, be proactive in that. If get to calls back and forth, especially now because we have social media, it's easier. Because for when I was younger, I was talking about when I was 10 and 11, I remember briefly the handwriting writing back and forth. But now with
Mm-hmm.
the age of social media, telephone and videos, more, you could create, even from a distance, you could still create that relationship with somebody that's not near you, that's not close to you,
Mm-hmm.
right? So for me, it was more like, do I really want to build this relationship? Do I really want to get to know him? And not just that, but just be realistic with myself. I, Initially, we need to have the hard conversations, right? ask the hard questions. It was uncomfortable, because it becomes where, what are you going to hear?
Mhm.
What response is the person going to give you, right?
Mhm.
And whatever response that you get, how would you take it? Would it be sufficient enough for you to feel, okay, I can move on, let's build?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you really have to consider those things, because the answer that you might get might not be the answer that you like.
Mhm. Agreed. What's the one burning question you wanted your dad to answer you when you met him?
What happened to you? Like, why didn't
Mhm.
you
Like,
follow
where
up?
were you?
Right. That really was my question. Like, I really, and now, I mean, I'm not gonna say this here, but other things as well that led to that.
Mhm. Mhm.
Other questions that I had asked, that not just that, but other questions as well, which I'm not gonna discuss
Mhm.
here. But
Mhm.
yeah, that was initially the first question. Like, where were you? Like, what happened to you? You know, and of course, the answer for me to hear, based on, like I said, I had to, whatever answer he provided, was sufficient for me. Was
Mhm.
it okay for me? Whatever the answer, whatever his response is, would that be sufficient enough for you, or speaking for myself, to be able to forgive and move on, and rebuild? Because maybe, everybody have their own perception of things, and certain answers might not be good enough for you as a person.
Mhm.
So that's something that I think you have to kind of think about and not gloss over, and not just pass over, because initially you have to consider, you have the opportunity to lead that, but you have the choices to decide where this relationship can go. You're no
Yeah.
longer a child. Well, as a child, you really don't have a lot of choices, but as an
Mhm.
adult, you do. You can say, I don't want to get to know you because XYZ, or I do want to get to know you because of XYZ. So the choices are really up to you to decide where this relationship is going to go.
Mhm.
So that's
Mhm.
one of the that's one of the biggest questions that I had to learn, but also I had to learn, um, just forgiveness. We all learn how to forgive and forgive. We all heard the word forgive to move on and all of that, right? But you really have to forgive from your heart, because if in
Mhm.
your heart you have not forgiven, it's hard to continue to build if you still have some kind of resentment. That's not
Mhm.
going to work.
Mhm.
So that's for me, I really had to sit with myself and generally speak to my heart and speak to my soul. Like, whatever answer I get, am I okay, or I'm gonna to forgive him and move on? Because if I couldn't do that, this relationship couldn't be possible, because I know I still would have some kind of feelings about something.
Mhm.
You know,
So how is your relationship now?
we still building. You
Still
know,
building. Mhm.
yeah.
You communicate more often and
Yeah. I mean, of course, we still communicate, back and forth, but now I'm more. Before I wouldn't. Before, honestly, before, to be truthful, before he would call me, but I would never call him.
mhm.
Right. That's, so now I'm being more actively, more conscious, to make an attempt to be more, to reciprocate when it comes to calling. You know,
Mhm.
so that's one of the things that I really generally had to intentionally do, because before I wouldn't do that. I'll speak to him when I speak to him, and that's pretty much what it was. But I really
Mhm.
had to be more intentional in that, if I wanted to get to know him and I wanted to build this relationship.
Yeah. Yep. So those are very good points.
Yeah.
When you share these kind of stories, they kind of leave me, like kind of speechless because that's pretty deep. I know that when I, asked a few of my friends about their relationships with their dad,
Hmm.
a lot of us here in the Caribbean, we experience a lot of absentee fathers.
Hmm.
We are raised by single parents.
Hmm.
We don't see our dads, we don't hear our dads necessarily. But sometimes, I mean, and that wasn't my particular case. I'm just sharing what they shared.
Right.
Sometimes,
Okay.
you learn the difference between how you view your dad as a child versus how you view your dad when you become an adult.
Right.
And what I mean is, for example, you may not have been seeing your dad as a child because he wasn't allowed to see you because of whatever he had going on with your mom, and that was the price, being
Hmm.
paid. But as a child, you think, my dad doesn't want me, he doesn't want
Hmm.
to be with me, he doesn't love me, not knowing that he may be trying to see you and he may
Hmm.
not be allowed to see you. And then as an adult, you have the opportunity to reach out if he still wants to have a relationship with you, because by then maybe he's tired.
Right.
And you reach out and then you realize, oh shoot, this wasn't what I thought it was. And then you have to build, but you still need to work on forgiveness,
Right.
because some of us have two people to forgive: your dad for not trying harder to somehow see you, and your mom for not letting your dad see you. So it's, as an adult, I find that things tend to make more sense.
Right.
My so as I said, yes, a lot of us have absentee dads. Other people, of course, had their dads and their moms together. Their dads were their mentors, they were their providers, they were always there for them, did everything with them, tried to guide them and mold them into being well-rounded adults for the future.
Mm-hmm.
My dad, my dad was a mechanic, and he wanted boys and he had girls. So
Well,
I learned about car engines from early o'clock. I learned about changing tires. We were,
wow.
like cutting hedges and mowing lawns and checking oil in car. We were very hands on because he wanted boys.
Right.
My dad, and this is not a judgment. This is also a Caribbean thing. My dad had children from other relationships, so my circle ended up being very big. And I have
Right.
pretty good relationships now. I have sisters, I have a brother, but in the beginning, of course, you don't really sometimes know who is who.
Right.
What I learned as a child was about parenting styles. My mom's style of raising us was very different to my dad's. He was strict, very
Mm-hmm.
black and white, very regimental. My mom was more, she was strict as well, but she was more easygoing.
Okay.
I found it was easier to talk to my mom than talk to my dad.
Okay.
And the underlying thing for a lot of our existence was finances. So I find when you're in a family and finance is an issue, everything is a big problem. It's not
Yeah.
only the finances, every other thing.
Everything.
And
Yeah.
as a child, I remember a lot. We had good times, yes, but I remember a lot of quarreling. Everything was a quarrel. And I don't do quarreling. I don't like drama. I don't,
No.
I thing never worked for me. And it was hard. It was hard. And I remember thinking, that maybe my mom should have left my dad because, of course, peace of mind, there's nothing that can trump peace of mind. And I
Right.
always said to my friends who had the absentee dads, maybe y'all were happier because your dad wasn't there. Sometimes relationships are hard
Yeah.
because it's two people. And there's always this tugging and pulling. And then you have your kids in the middle of all that. You know what?
Yeah.
I love you. It was nice being here. My favorite separately,
Right.
because sometimes it's hard. And I know that I have my own son and I'm also divorced. Our parenting is so hard. I don't care how many books they give you that tell you this is what you do, this is what you do, this they don't work because everybody's situation is so different. There's really no manual that can help you navigate a situation. You have to go through it. It's a lot of trial and error.
Yeah.
So parenting is hard. I had to realize as an adult that there really were things my mom was doing to aggravate my dad.
Mm-hmm.
So, and as a child, sometimes you take sides, and I find we tend to take sides a lot with our moms because we're closer to our moms. And I say,
Yeah.
I don't know about him. What he really
Mm-hmm.
doing? He confusing her. But then when you get to be an adult and you think back, or you experience something similar yourself, you realize,
Right.
yeah, she was
Yeah.
really antagonizing him and making him, miserable. And I've learned that men, they don't like arguing. They don't like confusion. They don't like
Mm-hmm.
drama. The more drama you give them, the more they're gonna find their ways to be out of the home. And then
Right.
one thing to another, but then you have to ask yourself, did I contribute to that
Mm.
situation? Which is a whole different life on a whole different day. But I'm just saying, as an adult, you see things differently, but as a child, because you don't have that frame of reference, you tend to be judgmental. And then you can think, my dad didn't want me. I don't see him. I don't hear him. He doesn't provide for me, but he wasn't allowed to. So it's a lot of healing that has to go on. It's a lot of forgiveness.
Yeah.
Um, and it's pretty hard. And you have to decide, do you want to? be the one to reach out and build that relationship or not. So you had a very good point. Is it worth your effort? What do you really want? Do you want
Right.
to know your dad and let bygones be bygones and move on? Or do you just want to hold on to the past and say, you know what, it's not even worth it. He was never interested in me. I'm not gonna be I'm not gonna be interested in him.
No, I mean you definitely got a point there, Gail. You know, everybody's situation is different, right? And I feel like as a kid, not like now that we're adults, right? As a child, you see
Mhm.
things from a child lens, obviously, right? But as an adult, you come to realize adults can sometimes play parts in certain
Yeah.
situations. We could both
Mhm.
aggravate each other in certain situations, right?
Mhm.
And sometimes, like you just said, sometimes the child in the middle is the one that suffers, which is unfortunate, but it does happen. But you know, the reason why I really wanted to have this live, right, was because not to put blame on anybody, because this wasn't a live to place any blame on anybody's circumstances, right? But it was more to start a
Mm.
discussion, because just like women, there are men that had absentee fathers, right, or fathers, or parents, or father, I say father figures that was in the household but was not present in the household, right?
Mhm.
Which means that they there, but they really wasn't there. If it makes sense,
Mhm.
right? So
Mhm.
this is why I really wanted to have this live, just to start this discussion for anybody there that maybe want to build a relationship with
Mhm.
that lost parent. But right,
Mhm.
and sometimes a lot of the times other people influence could play on our decisions.
Yeah.
And just to tell people, it's really about you and what you really want, right?
Mhm.
And what's important to you. If this relationship is important to build, is it sometimes it's not even important to build for yourself. Yeah, you got to go through the healing. You got to do the work. Y'all both have to do the work. But the benefit, maybe as an adult, for me was like, I'm an adult. I'm 35. Do I really need a father figure person at this point in my life? Right?
Mhm. Oh, that's a good question.
Right. And that's something that I really had to ask myself. I'm 35, but at this point, do I really need that parental figure when I really I'm already at this stage, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Like I don't have children, but sometimes in the process of fixing that relationship, the kids benefit because they get a grandfather out of it,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So you have to really consider certain decisions, certain things when we decide to embark on this journey of healing and forgiveness and rebuilding with someone, with that parent, with this, with that parental figure that was not there for us.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how hard was it to forgive your dad?
That's a good question.
I know. And I know you weren't expecting it because we didn't
No,
discuss
I wasn't. I was not
that.
expecting it.
Well, think about it. I'm gonna come back
um,
to you. You think
okay.
about it.
Yes, come
I'm
back
just
to
gonna
it.
go over to the comments and say hi to Micaiah Jeffers. I know him from another life. He's from Trinidad. And we have Joseph, as usual, our friend. Hi, Joseph. And from Miami. And he's thinking there's a lot of healing when we forgive and move on. Because I think you can't forgive and not move on. I think the two go hand in hand. And he also agrees there's no manual in life and all situations, are different. And now, Karen, you get to tell me about
Wow.
that number that you've come up with on how hard it was to forgive your dad. And I'm sorry that we didn't get the chance to invite
No, no, that's
I
okay.
wanted
That's
to
just
invite a
fine.
father with a daughter, to
But that
share
would be
what's your
good.
relationship like with your daughter. I do
Yeah.
know someone who has two beautiful daughters, and it was very hard for him after he and his wife broke up to see his daughters. It was
Hmm.
very hard. He wanted to,
Hmm.
but he just wasn't, allowed to. And I remember I kept telling him, just hold on, just hold on. Children do not remain children forever. They're going to become 18. If it's still an issue, they're going to become 21. And then they're going to have a say
Yeah.
whether they want to see you or not. So just hold on. I know it's hard. And then you'll be able to have that tough conversation. And I think you should have a conversation
Yeah.
as people get
Definitely.
older so that you can explain, it wasn't that I didn't love you or I didn't want to be there for you. It's just I wasn't allowed to be there. And it's not that you're throwing anybody's mom under the bus,
No, no, no. That's not what
but
we're
it's
doing.
just to explain, your feelings and to let
Right.
them know I've always loved you, but these were the cards that that I was dealt. And did I want to go to court and fight for that? No, you know. Um, so
Wow.
before you answer me, Karen, there's a question. Do you
That's a good
think not
question.
so good father-daughter relationships have an impact on your own relationships going forward? And I think so. What do you think, Karen? I think of
I
course they do.
yes. I personally me, yes. I why I think it does affect because as a girl, as a woman, I speak for myself when I say this, right? As a girl, as a young girl growing up, I didn't have a paternal figure. So for me, it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't an example of a man how I should have been treated, right? So then
Ah, because
I
you didn't have
allowed,
your dad
right? I
there.
didn't have that example of how a girl
Mhm,
should have been treated by by a man,
mhm,
right? So when I started
mhm.
to go out and date, I didn't always
Yeah.
select the best choices or allow the. I
Mhm,
didn't always. I allowed certain treatments because
mhm.
I was trying to figure out my way through the dating process
Yeah,
and trying
yeah.
to understand. And the process is not just that, but also trying to understand myself in the same process. At the same time. So
Mhm.
yeah, I feel like for me, I think I do believe as a daughter and the lack of a father figure, it does affect you dating
Yeah.
another relationship because you don't
Yes,
always
in
know what to
general.
pick.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
And
don't
this
always
not
know how
so good
to select
father-daughter
them.
relationship question is an interesting question because now that I'm thinking
Hmm.
about it, in my relationships, one of the things I was trying to avoid was noise. Remember, I told you, I having
Yeah,
lived in a house full of noise in my relationships now, I don't want noise. So I don't want to quarrel. I just want to toe the line, even if I don't like the line that I'm towing, because I don't
right,
want to get to the argument. I don't
right,
want to draw the boundaries because I'm afraid of the argument, because I don't want the argument. So
right.
that's a very good point. And that would have been because I was influenced on, what I went through, before.
Yeah, I
So
feel
that's
like
a good one.
fathers. I'm sorry to cut you off again.
No, no, it's okay. But
Um,
and do you think? But you talked about your relationship with your dad for you, not being there for you. But then one of the things that you might be missing, Karen, is witnessing how a good husband treats his wife, which is
that
an
too.
example for you as
Right,
his daughter. Because then when you go to find a relationship, you're looking for that positive reinforcement that you saw
right.
your dad display to your mom. So if you don't have that as well, you don't know because you don't have an example.
Yeah,
What are you
yeah.
following?
That's true, but
What are you
not.
following?
No, I agree. But not only that, for example, even if parents does not work out, right? They don't stay
Mhm.
together because they cohabitation is not good for them, right? But you do have a good co-parenting relationship. That still shows a child something, right? It
Mhm.
still shows a
Yeah.
child how to communicate between two adults, right? So
Mhm.
even if you guys are
Mhm.
not together in the same household because of whatever reason, right? But you have to have a great co-parenting relationship. Y'all mutually show each other respect. That's still showing this child something,
Mhm.
right? So yeah, parent inside the household is great, but if let's say he's not in the household, but then it's a lot of fighting
Mhm.
back and forth, a lot of bickering, a lot of
Yeah.
pettiness,
Yeah.
you're showing the child something different, something as well, right?
And I'm smiling
So
because you're saying that as somebody who does not live in the Caribbean.
no, I mean I'm
But
telling
we're
you,
very
like,
emotional. I find, moms and dads sometimes, especially moms, we get very emotional
yeah,
and we
yeah, I
like
think that's everywhere
drama.
though.
And, let me tell
No,
you. But yeah,
yeah,
yeah, it is
it,
it is true. And sometimes with the moms trying to fight for what they think is right to see the other side of the picture and they just can't. Because yes, there are fathers out there who may not want to have a relationship with their children, whether their daughters or not. And you're fighting and it's a losing battle and you get emotional, you play off the handle more often than you want to. So yeah, that's a very good point as well,
yeah, I feel
Karen.
like fathers, just like mothers, a blueprint for a child, for example, of
Yes.
dating
Hmm.
and just involvement to deal with another
Yes.
human being.
And you didn't
They
have that
pro-
conversation with your dad. So, when you had your
yeah,
first boyfriend, you didn't have that sit down. Okay, let me tell you, when he
right,
does this, this is what he means. Da,
right,
da, da. I didn't
right,
have, you
yeah,
know, our thing was just don't go with any boys. No boys aren't calling
yeah,
you and you're not going out and end of story. Check boys when you're like 50. So yeah, right.
Oh, okay. I don't know about that, but okay, yeah.
Well, me, he didn't say that, but it felt that way. It
Yeah,
felt
but
like,
if I,
oh my God,
yeah.
you're not gonna be able to do anything until you're in a wheelchair. Help, somebody help. But
Yeah.
he was very protective of us as
That's
daughters.
sweet
But
though. That is
you
sweet.
know,
That's a
in
sweet
other
thing.
areas, he needed a little bit more help. But then, in looking back and hearing his history, he didn't have a father as an example either.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's kind of
Yeah.
generational and cyclical. And
Yep.
because our parents, but I don't know how it is for you, our parents and our grandparents, they don't really talk a lot about the past. But if they did,
Hmm.
so much of our present would make more sense before it became, before we got into the future and make those other decisions where we understood, well, this is why he behaves that way. Let's just have some,
Yeah.
let's put some markers here and try to, but we never knew. So yeah, he didn't have a good father figure, and neither did my ex-husband. So, it's kind
Yeah.
of, but you don't find that out sometimes until you're in it, which is sad. I'm thinking if
Yeah.
I had to live my life over again, I would do a lot of FBI research on
That'll
people
actually, yeah,
before
that it's
before
important.
I
Yeah.
got
No.
involved with them. I'd be a stalker. That's what I
No.
tell you, stalker. So Karen, did you find a number for me? What's your number for your
Okay.
dad?
Oh my God.
How
Okay.
hard
So
was it to forgive on
no.
a scale of 1 to 10?
You know what? I'm okay. To me, the reason why I say it was I say a 10, right? Because
Mm,
um, I used to, my mother, for example, mom, I never heard my mother say nothing negative about him. I never have heard
mhm,
her say that to, anything
mhm,
negative. But as I started growing up as a young lady, and I started seeing certain things for myself, right?
mhm,
And I
mhm,
started noticing certain things for myself. I make my own conclusion based on what I saw and things that,
mhm.
certain things that have happened, right?
Yeah.
So
Mhm,
for me, I say it was a 10 because it wasn't no influence from anybody. It wasn't no influence from my mother. It was based on my own judgment and based on what I saw. So
mhm.
that's why it was challenging because it was like to move on because it's based on my perspective. It's different when somebody's influencing you opposed to when you're seeing things for yourself.
Yeah.
So that's why I say it was a 10 because I had to kind of rewire, like, okay, why do you do this? And ask certain questions just for
Mhm,
me to be able to forgive and move on and be able to
mhm.
rebuild. Are we 100% there? Hell no. I ain't
Yeah.
gonna lie to you. We're not there. But if it's still a work in progress type thing. It's not
Yeah.
gonna and it's not gonna be something that's gonna work, that's gonna happen overnight. And I think that's the biggest takeaway I think for today for anybody that's listening. It's not going to
Mhm.
happen overnight. If that's
It
something that you
isn't.
generally want to do, it's an intentional
Yeah.
work on both ends, right? Him because he fails you as a parental figure, right? But it doesn't mean
Mhm,
that he cannot be there as a friend. And then
mhm,
of course you build you know to consider him more of a father figure per se, to be able to open up about your problem and be able to have certain conversations with him. So it's a thing that takes time. But
mhm,
like I said, my father's not a young guy. He's in his 70s already. You know,
mhm.
so even within that, it's something that takes time. Just for me to be able to understand him, right, and him to be able to understand me in the way I am, because
Mhm.
I'm no
And
longer
you
a
have
child.
you have
So
to get
certain
to know
things,
each other now.
right? So certain things, and maybe my
Yeah.
way of thinking and the way he's thinking are two different way of thinking.
Mhm.
So it's something that it's acceptance on both ends, right?
Yep.
And forgiveness on one end, right?
Mhm.
Um, and just to be able to have that open dialogue and be intentional. I think it takes time,
Yeah.
guys. Don't rush it. Don't feel bad if you feel some kind of way. You're entitled to feel how you want to feel.
Yeah, yeah, and
You
acknowledge
know,
those feelings as well,
yeah,
both of
right,
you, because
right,
I'm sure your
right,
dad has his own feelings.
right.
And I have before we get to I have 7 pointers for those, daughters who may want to build their relationships with their absentee fathers. But
Yeah,
I
somebody said
just
something
wanted
good.
to acknowledge Joseph. Joseph is
Yes,
saying he has
that's a
four
good.
children.
Yeah.
You can put it up, one adult boy and three very young. The young ones are a boy and two girls, and he currently lives with them, and they are his life. And he can't see
Hmm.
himself without them on a daily basis. And yes,
That's
I know how
sweet.
much Joseph
That's
loves
sweet.
He loves his family a lot, and he is my happiness guy. He's permanently happy and excited about life. We're
That's
gonna have him.
good.
We're gonna have him on a show soon. So here are the 7 tips.
Before you say
Um,
that, Gail, I'm
yep,
sorry to
sure.
interrupt.
Go ahead.
I
Go
do
ahead.
want to say this comment that he mentioned, which is very true. All relationships takes time,
Yes.
but some more take more than, which is true. So
Yes.
just give yourself grace and just allow it to naturally build,
Mm-hmm.
without pressure.
Yeah, and of course, if anybody else listening has a comment that they want to share, please put it in the chat, and we'll be sure to, to talk about it. But here, they're just 7 quick points. So if you want to make that initial contact and
Hmm.
have that first meeting, initiate your contact indirectly if you want. Like Karen was talking about, you can do an email, maybe a WhatsApp. If you're afraid of that,
Hmm.
picking up the phone and having that one on one, but be realistic. You're really not sure about the response. Don't panic. It's okay. At least you've made a start. So start fresh. You might need to wipe that slate clean. Keep it short and simple when you do have that conversation. Don't bash each other.
Hmm.
You might need to be prepared to apologize because sometimes your dad might be thinking, well, you could have reached out. Why were you waiting for me to reach out? But at the end of the day, I think we need to be open to a new relationship and whatever that looks like, feels like. So, Karen, that last point goes back to your first, what you said earlier. Before
Hmm.
you do whatever you think you should do, ask yourself, what do I really want?
Hmm. Right.
Because your
Right.
why is going to govern your behavior and your decisions. So, if you want to build that relationship, I think your next why is, why do you want to build that relationship? And as you drill down, every time you answer, ask a why. And when you get to 3 or 4 levels down, then you decide, okay, I think I'm clear as to the foundational why. And now I'm going to make that call or send that WhatsApp message or send that email. But
Hmm.
my mind is going to be prepared for, if he doesn't want to respond to me, fine.
Hmm.
If he responds to me, that's fine as well, because you can only be accountable to you for you.
Hmm. Right.
And it takes two. So Joseph has some very good points. Healing takes time, forgiveness takes time. We have to let go, but it takes two. If you reach out and your dad is not willing to meet you halfway, still not going to work. It takes 2 hands to clap. But at least you have tried. It's different if you don't try and it doesn't work because you haven't. If you tried and it doesn't work, well, it wasn't meant to be at that particular time. You'll try again later if that's what you
Hmm.
want to do. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Good points, Gail. Good points,
Yeah.
Gail.
So,
Yeah.
how do we wrap up, Karen? I have no more goodies for you. Do you want to, if people want to connect with us, you can put our LinkedIn
Yes. Please do connect
con-
with us if you guys
links.
want.
And of course, you can follow us. Well, I'm on YouTube, I'm on IG, I'm on Facebook at Gail Withers. Karen is
Definitely.
all over the place as usual. As her as your favorite virtual assistant. She has her LinkedIn lives on Tuesday. Mine
Yes.
will be coming on Mondays. I'm in the process of sorting those out. Actually, I'm going to be welcoming you guys to the G Suite very soon, where we're going to talk about all things entrepreneurial and business and life and career, and of course, customer service, customer experience, and
Mm-hmm.
how we tie those two back into business strategy. And Karen is going to continue to wow us with her medical findings.
Yes.
I hope you
Yeah.
take a look at her last post where, everybody in the US is talking about that Wade versus Roe, and Karen is saying, how does that affect you in terms of now going to the doctor and filling out your medical claims and stuff, which is a very good point. So continue to follow her to, stay
Yeah.
in the know. And Karen, you can read Joseph's comment,
Yes. In
or you
closing,
can putting up. Yes, you can put it up. You can
yes.
put it up on the screen
It
for us.
says forgiveness has two sides. Forgive the other person and accepting that you forgave the other person for your own healing and to move on. This is the tidbit in closing,
Yeah,
because
that is
forgiveness,
very good.
yeah,
That's a good
forgiveness,
point.
yeah, definitely, forgiveness is one, and forgiveness to move to actually actively build something, and forgiveness to say, you know what, I forgave you, so I'm able to move on, even if this relationship does not work, it's not healthy for me. And whichever one is chosen to do, it's okay. There's no good. There's no right or wrong answer. It's all ultimately what you want for you and whoever you choose to bring into your life, right?
It's true. Yeah.
So, with that being said, guys, thank you for
Thanks to everybody who
today.
joined us.
Thank you. Yeah,
We had a
thank
wonderful
you.
conversation. Thanks for sharing your
Yeah.
story, Karen, as usual.
Listen, I'm all about sharing as much as I'm willing to share. I share certain things, not everything, but I'm willing to share as much as I'm, So I'm open to a certain degree. But I
Okay.
just feel like this conversation is important because there's a lot of people that struggle, and if I can help somebody in some way, and
I
somebody
am
can take
sure it
some
helps
from
somebody,
it,
Karen. It helped everybody on
why
this
not?
live today. It's going to
Why
help
not?
everybody who's going to watch the replay.
Yes.
We are blessed, as
Thank
Joseph is saying in
you.
the chat.
Yeah.
It was great to have. These are the tough conversations I think that more of us need to have. And if you're
Yeah.
struggling with a relationship, whether it's your dad, your mom,
Whichever.
just
Right.
think about it. Ask yourself, do you want to press it? Do you want to move in and do something about it?
Yes.
And then do something. And message Karen if you want, because she will give you advice.
I mean, listen, if you want to talk, yeah, you put me to
Karen loves to talk. You message and reach out to Karen, and she will help you. As she said, though she's not a therapist, she's not a
No,
a
I'm not.
psychologist,
I hear
anything like that.
that.
But she is very good to talk to. And yes, Joseph
Yeah,
has a good point, because a lot of people are suffering in silence and they don't want to bring themselves out into the open. So yeah, these conversations are to help people know that they're not alone, and that
yeah,
all of us struggle with something at some time, and we are all in this
definitely,
life together.
definitely.
So
Thank you
that's
guys.
my
And with
end.
that,
Thanks for joining
it's
us.
the end.
Yep, that's the
Thank you.
end. Thanks for joining us, and see you next Sunday.
Yeah, see you guys.
Stay safe.